Great empires in 5 minutes. By flipping rapidly through these 30 pages, you will see the entire history of the world in one quick experience, starting with Egypt here in 3100 BC, and then going right over to Mesopotamia, today's Iraq, where we have the Sumer civilization in 3000, and then the Akkadians north of them taking over, and in fact, Sargon the Great's empire extending all the way to the Mediterranean, and then the Babylonians take over the same area. Israel begins having its kings in 1030 BC, but Assyria then takes over the Middle East and takes over most of Israel. But Babylon becomes strong again, and not only beats Assyria, but takes the Israelites into captivity in Babylon. Persia, though, beats them around 513 BC, and notice that how big the empire is, all the way over to India, as well as controlling Egypt, and they also allow the Israelites to return to their homeland. But it's in 323 BC, Alexander the Great takes over, and the Greek civilization permeates the Middle East area. China, meanwhile, has become united in 221 BC, and the smaller red area is the country of Qin, which took over the others, and from Qin we get the word China. The Roman Empire forms in 27 BC and takes over the area on all sides of the Mediterranean. However, in 476 AD, the invading tribes have thrown Rome out of Europe, and all that's left is the Middle Eastern part. In 623, the Arabs have become Muslim, and they go into a period of expansion, taking away most of the rest of what's left of Rome. All that Rome is left with is a little area around Turkey and Greece. Meanwhile, what happened in Europe, the tribe that became dominant is called the Franks, and this map shows their expanse under their greatest king, Charlemagne, who became emperor of the Franks in 800 AD. In 962, the German half of that portion became the Holy Roman Empire, and that lasted for another 900 years. The Muslims began to expand around the world, and at one point, starting in 1192, took control of India, and that lasted really until the British took control in the 1800s. The Mongols formed one of the largest empires in world history. Here's how it looked in 1206. Many different groups, and the group over in China was called the Yuan Dynasty. A large empire, but only lasted 100 years. Meanwhile, over in the Mediterranean area, the Ottoman Turks, who were also Muslim, had taken over lots of the area that used to be covered by Rome, and they lasted until World War I. China, after the Mongols, began to expand. The darker red area here is China proper, but in their following dynasties, they took over nearby places like Tibet and the Turkish area there. When the Russians finally were able to get out from under the rule of the Mongols, they began to expand, and the Russian Empire not only took over Siberia, but lots of the Turkish lands to its south, and that lasted until World War I. Meanwhile, America, just before Columbus arrived, had those three famous civilizations, the Inca, the Aztec, and the Maya. The Spanish took over then the Americas. You can see all the way up into North America as well as down South America. The French Empire followed, and the French Empire in its early stages, this is 1730, controlled most of central North America. The British were left with a little bit up here next to Hudson Bay, but they also were beginning to get their toeholds in other part of the world. You can see the British East India Company already setting up operations in India. This map shows how the United States expanded. Each of these little portions is another area that was added, such as the Louisiana Purchase. The Germans formed an empire in 1871, and you notice that their empire included a number of colonies down in Africa, but those were taken away from Germany after the German Empire was the loser in World War I. The British Empire is a later picture of it. You can see from this why we say the sun never set on the British Empire, because Canada was still under the crown, and lots of colonies in Africa, and look at the huge expanse in India and the surrounding lands. Here's another view of the later French Empire. They no longer have those large expanses in North America, but have taken over virtually all of West Africa and also Vietnam. Near the end of World War I, the communists began to take over Russia. This is Soviet Russia, or the USSR, and not only do they maintain everything that the German Empire had, including all the Turkish areas, but after World War II, they move over, and lots of parts of Eastern Europe also come under communist rule. That lasts until 1989. The last sheet is some highlights for today, and some of the ones I've colored here are the newest country, South Sudan, and up here where Czechoslovakia split into Czech Republic and Slovakia. That is the 30 sheets. What next? You can print these sheets from my website, foundbytes.com, and you can also go back and look at the timelines that are on each sheet and compare them to the master timeline. This master timeline has got the Roman Empire right in the middle of it, but it covers all 4,000 years that were on the sheets. The timeline has a YouTube of its own, which you can look up by looking up world history on a page. Besides that, in this book, there are lots and lots of other empires, so that after you feel you've mastered those first 30 empires, you can add more. And finally, at the very end, blank pages for you to make your own empires and keep making your book larger. I hope this helps you to feel that you have a view of all of world history. Thanks.